to know that life went on in this business district, and lots of people started cycling, and the traffic wasn't that bad. Now, we also put in a lot of off-road paths, like the Springwater Corridor, some of them next to railroads. And over time, we also put in a lot of greenways or bike boulevards. And over time, we expanded the bikeway network from about almost no bikeway miles to about 300 miles of bikeways, including the bike lanes on Willamette Boulevard, which are very, very popular and very well used. In fact, I'm involved in a project right now to see if we can widen them and make them better. And in 1996, I explored 18 bicycle-friendly cities in Europe, and I brought back a lot of ideas that were considered very innovative from our standpoint. Bike signals and signage, really good wayfinding signage. And I particularly like these signs that Portland put in because it says the mileage, but it also says time. And it's based on a 10-mile-an-hour cycling speed, which is what, about 16 kilometers an hour. And then we look at bike boxes. Every European city I visited had these. You have them here in Vancouver, so you know what I'm talking about. We put them in Portland. Extremely controversial in the States. And then we also started putting in colored markings, using the Copenhagen blue at first, and then we switched to green eventually, but to mark conflict areas. And we put them at 10 conflict zones where motorists have to cross bicycle space, but bicyclists have the right of way. As we press ahead towards the next generation of higher quality bikeways in North America, bikeways like our friends in Copenhagen have long been using. And these are streets like Broadway in New York we were talking about, which just blows us away. It's amazing what they're doing in New York in such a short amount of time. And Broadway in Portland, and I'm working on Broadway in Seattle, and I have to say, I'm just suggesting, I know you've got off-Broadway, but if you brought Broadway into the picture here, then we could have 4 cities with Broadway. I'm just saying. Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C., 2-way bike lanes, cycle track, whatever term you want to use, in the middle, which is great, and it's working really well. Cambridge, Massachusetts. And a lot of other cities, I'm working with about a dozen, and of course our friends, our Dunsmuir and Hornby new cycle tracks here. Yes, please. It is great, I have to say. It's great. The lessons that Vancouver and Portland and Copenhagen and Amsterdam and others have learned do translate. I teach at Portland State University, and we formed an institute there, the Initiative for Bicycle and Pedestrian Innovation, so we could have students come out already embracing bicycling and walking as a core part of transportation, and so that we could retrain professionals as they're going through their careers. We've worked in 48 states, and we've worked here in British Columbia in 7 countries, and we've implemented more than 5,000 miles of bikeways and walkways, and we've touched more than 1,000 communities. All of our communities, no matter where you are on a continuum. Over on the one side are very auto-oriented cities, like my hometown, Dallas, Texas. Places where today's cyclists are on the fitness side of things. What'd you call them, Gordon? Mammals. And that was middle-aged men in lycra. I'm sorry if that offends anyone in the audience. But this is people who are very confident, riding in mixed traffic on busy roads. So is there anybody here who feels that they're in this category? It's okay. Very confident. Men and women, of course. Thank you. We do know that about 1% of people in most cities are very confident riding in traffic, and they're already riding in most cities, so and that's great. And we know that about 1/3 of the population is we can't really reach them, they're not interested. And we know that in Vancouver and Portland we've got something like 10% of people biking for daily transportation, something like that. And these people have responded to the bikeways that we've put in and the efforts that we've put in so far. And that leaves something like 2/3 of the population, like 60% of the population, that thinks bicycling is a good thing. And they have actually a positive association, and they might ride for sport or fitness, or they might ride on the weekends, but they're not quite comfortable riding. They have a lot of objections. They don't know the routes. They feel uncomfortable with how they're going to change their clothes. They've got to drop off kids. There's a lot of objections, seasonal, weather, time of day. There's a lot of issues. And that's the group that we're trying to reach. And so on the other, so this is one end of the spectrum. And the other end of the spectrum, we've got Copenhagen, where like more than a third of the population bicycles. And frankly, they don't call themselves cyclists. They're just people, humans. And a lot of them get around by bike, a lot, tremendous amount. And somewhere in the middle of this continuum are cities like Portland, and Vancouver, and Chicago, and New York, San Francisco, not so much Boston, Minneapolis. And in all these cities, we're sort of in the middle of this continuum, but we're kind of in the top tier of North America, right? Montreal, I put in that category, and not quite a few smaller cities, Davis, California, Cambridge, Boulder, thank you. So probably here, who have we got here up here? Smaller cities here in Canada. Of course, Victoria is amazing. So the question is, can we do better? Can we get to be where Copenhagen is? Well, it's easy for you guys to say, right? You're all sold already. Of course! We've come a long way, but we've only scratched the surface of what we can become. And to get there, though, we're not only going to have to provide excellent bikeway systems, because that's not the full picture of what we have to do. We have to evolve our codes and our policies, our methodologies, our traffic models. We have to evolve our laws and our approach to land use planning and design, and none of that's going to be easy. We have to integrate cycling into our schools. Every single one of them, every single kid has to get bicycle safety education and encouragement in school. And we've done this in Portland. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. I led Portland's Safe Routes to School program for a number of years, and we now have record numbers of kids biking and walking to school. And my own kids' school, we went from having almost no one biking to more than 50% of the kids are either biking or walking every day, and the traffic is gone. And our principal tells everyone that she is so proud because our test scores are up, and it's because fit kids are better learners. That's what she says. We also have a healthy food program that goes with it. And at the same time as we're doing all of that, we're reforming that stuff and we're teaching our kids and we're encouraging, we, all of us, have to reform our own behavior. We have to bike and walk for more trips, all of us. No matter where we live or work, no matter how many kids we have or obstacles we perceive or are truly in our way. But let me share some statistics, because I'm very fond of data to make a point. And this is some information from Portland, and I know that Vancouver has very similar statistics. And that is that no matter 4 different ways of measuring bicycle use, no matter how you measure it, it's going up. We have about, as I said, about 10% of people biking for daily transportation, up from less than 1% 15 years ago. More than 18% of Portlanders use the bicycle for daily transportation at least some of the time. And in our close-in neighborhoods, we're at 29, 28, somewhere in there percent. Good numbers, right? Europeans, right? Are we getting there? Yes, close. Go. It's okay. He says it's okay. It's not that good. And on certain corridors, bicycles account for 20% of trips. The green bars are the number of miles of bikeways. And here's our wiggly line showing bike use on 4 downtown bridges that we count. More than 17,000 daily trips on these 4 downtown bridges. Add in pedestrian trips, we've got a whole bridge worth of trips on bicycle or foot. We have increased capacity on these 4 bridges by 20%, but we have added 0 motor vehicular capacity. It's all been bicycle capacity. And at the same time as bicycle use is increasing, the crash rate has plummeted. That's the crash rate. So we feel good about that. And we've also created a $100 million local, every year, a $100 million local bicycle industry in bicycle retail sales and services, tourism, manufacturing, and other bicycle-related companies. And Vancouver's also had some similar growth in direct jobs, direct benefits from it. We've undone all of this for less than 1% of Portland's transportation budget. For the cost of 1 mile of urban freeway, $50 to $60 million US, we've built 300 miles of bikeways in the city of Portland. 1 mile for 300 miles. I always say it's the best bang for buck investment in the city of Portland's transportation history. Now, worldwide, I'm going to go to the world for a minute. We know that that transportation sector is responsible for approximately a third of greenhouse gas emissions, and that, depending on where you are in the world, that's getting worse. Vancouver is one of the few bright lights in that you're almost at meeting the goals that were set forth in Kyoto in the Global Climate Change Treaty. And we know that associated healthcare costs of the emissions from just the air quality perspective are massive, and then you add on the healthcare costs from sedentary lifestyles, and we've got truly a healthcare issue in there. And we know that modest increases in bicycling and walking could lead to an annual reduction of 70 to 200 billion miles of automobile travel and 3 to 8% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions. Every 1% of automobile travel shifted to non-motorized transportation decreases energy use and emissions by 2 to 4%. These numbers are very hard for me to comprehend. I don't even know what that means, these percentages. In the United States, since that early days when I told you we passed that transportation bill, we've spent $4.5 billion on bicycling and walking in the U.S. But we have estimated that if we invest modest amounts of money in bicycling and walking and increase it even just a little bit, we're going to save $65 billion a year in healthcare costs and air quality costs and congestion costs and economic impacts. But I do find these big numbers very hard to grasp. And when I look at the magnitude of Canada, I mean just the land, the geography, it's so spread out, and the United States is so big. And then we look at the Netherlands, it's very small and compact. I start to feel a little better about how our numbers look really bad compared to those other places. And I start to think the Netherlands is kind of like a Vancouver. Or, we've got all these urban centers all over North America. And we're making tremendous progress in these urban centers, where the work of creating balanced transportation systems is just beginning, as Gordon said, and it's accelerating in some places and snowballing in others. Because once individuals and communities get a taste of healthy, active transportation, they want more. So take my hometown, Dallas, Texas. They built a trail, the Katy Trail. I don't have a great picture of it, but it's wildly popular, and it goes only 3 miles. And so they hired us to help them design a network of Copenhagen-style bikeways. So we would take a street like that, and we'd have a separated bikeway right in their downtown, which is phenomenal. At the time that Vancouver got 30% of residents to not drive around town because of the Olympics, and really showed the world that massive amounts of people can come to a place for many weeks, and that you don't have to build a bunch of extra capacity for automobiles and parking. I mean, it's really phenomenal what happened here in Vancouver. Dallas was showing the world that when they built the new Texas Stadium for the Cowboys, that they were going to do the exact opposite. And they built just literally a whole city's worth of space of parking, and that's the only way to get around. I'll let you ask a question in a second. Okay, so anyway, downtown Dallas. So it was phenomenal when they hired us, and they said they wanted us to build a network of Copenhagen-style bike paths in downtown Dallas on the streets to connect this trail. And they're so determined to get better than where they are, which, since they're it's starting at a very low place, so there's no problem. They can do better than where they are, right? So anyway, I go to my parents' house after this public meeting that I'm at, and the public meeting's phenomenal, and 200 people came, and they were all really supportive of this. And my stepdad, Tommy, you met Tommy earlier, said I was crazy. He says, "Oh, great." I showed him my plans for the bike paths and whatnot, and he says, come. I want to show you something. I got something in my garage I want to show you." And so I go out into the garage, and this is what he's got. Yep, got himself a bike. That's right. And he says, "I used to think you were crazy, but now I just think you were ahead of your time." And he says, "You were right then, and you're right now. Let's go." Because not only did he get himself a bike, but he got me a bike, and he got me some gloves, and he got me a helmet, and he wanted to go for a ride. And he and all his buddies, he's like 75, they all bike in circles around the subdivision in the suburbs, which is not that much fun. And he wants to go further, and they want other options. And he says, he hands me this editorial from the Dallas Morning News, and I'll just read it to you. And it says, "Most people around Dallas would define hike as what happens when you get a bad parking spot. Neighborhood means anything within 5 freeway exits," right? Around the corner. "The car culture may be dominant in these parts, but countercultural forces are busy trying to entice us out of our guzzlers and onto our feet." And I hope that you'll all get involved and be part of the solution in this beautiful, amazing work of creating active communities where bicycling and walking are safe, healthy, normal, and fun daily activities. Enjoy the ride. Thank you.